This is an 8-iron, and it's a dead shank.
Wow.
Way right.
Oh, takes a hop off the path.
You got to be kidding me. Very tough pitch shot right here. You got to hit it into the hill. One hop up and bite, and it's in.
Kind of like that.
Well, I would like to welcome the 2017 Stay Sure European Order of Merit winner, Clark Dennis, to the Sub 70 podcast. Clark, really appreciate you taking the time to join us.
It's good to be with you, Jason.
Well, the hot topic of the day, I figured you played professional golf for a long time, so I'd love to get your thoughts on this. The USGA has the distance report that came out. I don't think there's anything shocking in this, that especially at the highest level, the golf ball is going further. Thoughts? You know, you've played kind of, you know, through the old equipment into the new era of equipment. What's your sort of thoughts on where this equipment debate needs to be, and is there bifurcation? Like, where does this need to go in your opinion, from seeing amateurs that you're playing with out there on pro-ams, and then also golf at the highest level?
Well, it's interesting because, you know, my career has kind of bridged the two eras. So I played 2 U.S. Opens using a wood driver with a steel shaft and a balata ball. So I've seen it, and then I played them using, you know, 45-inch drivers with 460cc heads and, you know, the new ball. So, you know, what's interesting to me is whenever I was younger, the longer hitters were longer, but they were about 20 yards longer, maybe 30 at the most, you know, the very longest guys, and they weren't necessarily the best players. Nowadays, it's very difficult to get to the top level without being an incredibly long hitter of the ball. So I think that has definitely changed a lot. I think the equipment has changed it. I think it's mostly the new ball, although I think drivers have made some difference. But I believe that, you know, if you roll back the ball a little bit, made it spin more, made it go offline like it did when we learned how to play golf, that it would definitely bring a little skill back into the game, and it would change the dynamics of what kind of player is going to play well.
What do you think the amateurs should be? Should the guy like me, 2 or 3 handicap, who's still 6,400, 6,500 yard golf course is fine, driver goes 250, 260, do you think I should then have a ball that kind of is stopping at this point and then maybe roll it back from the top amateurs? Or how do you then deal with the amateur problem? Or if you look at that report, we haven't hit the ball nearly as much of the gain as a top level amateur or professional golfer.
Right, and the distance comes when you get to a certain swing speed. So it definitely has not really helped your average 85 to 95 mile an hour swing speed. And so I don't know if rolling back the ball for us is really going to affect the amateurs, you know, the lower amateurs that much, because they really haven't gotten much gain out of it. The main thing is want people to enjoy the sport. So you don't want to take things away. They're going to create enjoyment for your average amateur, even your, 1, 2, 3 handicapper you. So, there should probably be a discussion about a ball for professionals and maybe top levels, college type, U.S. amateur type amateurs, something that has a maximum that you can go with. So I think, it's a difficult question though. It really is hard to determine where that is.
Yeah, I agree. I think my gut is at some point they're just going to have 2 different balls and put a line in the sand for kind of where it is. And then, because I think it's such a small population that this is affecting, i.e. you guys on tour, the top amateur players. Because as you well know, there's a huge difference between a guy who's a +2 or +3, even a 1 or 2 handicap. It's a world of difference as you get down to that level. I just hope the USGA doesn't, golf is hard enough for most amateur players. I hope they don't roll the stuff back where my 250-yard drive now goes 230 yards, yada, yada. And it gets, people say, oh, forget it, golf's hard enough. And then I was making some progress with the ball not spinning as much, and now I'm not even going to play, or it's just too hard. So I hope they can find the balance. We
want people to enjoy the game still, so you need to find a balance. The other thing that has changed from, like I said, my first U.S. Open was in 1988. Used a wood driver there. I played in 1994, 95. mid 90s where I used a Callaway. But what has really changed, and the USGA probably hasn't really addressed this, is U.S. Opens back in the day, if you missed the fairway, you weren't getting it out. I mean, you were chipping out. And the fairways are much wider on the setups now. In the majors, the rough is not as penal typically as it was back then. So, I mean, there's also that could be done. And even the regular tour events, when I started, my rookie year was 1990, the rough was much more penalizing than it is now. So, nowadays, these guys, they hit it so far, they don't really care if it goes in the rough or in the fairway. When I was started playing, you had to hit it in the fairway to really be a competitive player.
Do you miss the days of where shot makers could really do well on tour, of that, for lack of a better word, it seemed like it was a little bit more art than just brute strength? Did you kind of miss seeing guys hit quote-unquote golf shots a little bit? Kind of looking back, did you enjoy watching, when you were watching a fellow competitor at the highest level, was it kind of cool what they could do with that old Blada ball or a professional 90 compared to what kind of happens now or how the game is played now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I look back at some of the guys I played with, like a Corey Pavin, who was, obviously didn't hit the ball very far, but was an absolute master at working the ball left and right to left, chipping, putting. I mean, that's an amazing way to play golf. And nowadays just don't see that too much. And it's not an indictment on the younger players, because the equipment is set up to hit it high, straight, and far. And so that's the way you have to play now. So, all credit to them. They've learned to play the game that way, and they've done an incredible job doing it. And every sport has advanced. I mean, basketball players nowadays are taller, faster, stronger than they were. It's I'm not saying that the younger players aren't every bit as good. It's just different. They're, it's a different game now than it was back then.
Totally agree. It'll be an interesting debate to see what happens going forward. It's out there, and it'll probably take a while, but the debate will be interesting. Well, going to ask you too. You've had a really good run over in Europe on the Stay Shore Tour, which is their version of the Champions Tour over in Europe for the European Tour. What has changed, if anything, in your game where you've been so successful and winning every year that you're over there? Is there anything that you worked on that came about for you to have this level of success?
Well, it's pretty interesting, Jason. I when I was about to turn 50, I knew that, I would like to give it one more chance. Obviously, I'd like to be playing the Champions Tour more. I do play some on the Champions Tour, but I'm not exempt. So I try to get myself in good shape. And, I went to the Q School on the Champions Tour when I was 49, didn't make it. Went to Europe to Q School and didn't make it. And at that time, I was really at a crossroads with, what am I going to do? Because here I am 50 years old. Do I get a job? Do I start over a new career that, at 50 years old, it was tough. So I just kind of made a decision when I was 50 after I missed in Europe, because I did miss in Europe the first time I attempted it in the Q School. There's only 5 spots, so not too hard to miss. And it was really I didn't change my swing. I didn't change anything, but I decided that no matter what, I was going to enjoy it. I was going to have a grateful attitude about being able to play golf, because I knew that I didn't have long left, whether it was a year, 5 years, 10 years to play professional golf. And I just made a commitment that year to having a grateful attitude about everything that I did. And I went out and I played a few Champions Tour events that year. I did okay, not great. I went to the Champions Tour Q School and didn't make it. But then I went to Europe and didn't make the Q School. And that was, there's a lot of stories about almost being done, but I feel like, I've got a pretty good one. I was playing the last 9 at Q School. It's in Portugal. And obviously I was right there, kind of right around the number. And I made a birdie and a bogey. And then there's number 14 is a par 3 down the hill. It's a beautiful place, Portugal, where they play this Q School. Big field to the right. It's a downhill, tough par 3, about a 5-iron. I remember I blocked this 5-iron right, and it wasn't a good shot. And there's a cart path right at the green, and it hit one bounce on the cart path, and it's going out of bounds. I mean, it was definitely going out of bounds. It hits the top of a tree, it kicks back left, just right of the green, and I got it up and down. And if that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't be talking to you. I wouldn't have, I'd be working in some job somewhere if that one bounce hadn't happened. And so I think looking back on that, when I started to play that year, I was just so happy to be there. I was so grateful to be playing professional golf that it just allowed me to play free and to play well. And I had a great year that year and won the Order of Merit, won a couple of times, had a lot of chances to win other than that. And it just propelled me to, what's happened the last few years.
Talking about the Champions Tour over here, you hear the debate kind of on that side. I've had like John Rieger on talking about and Neil Lancaster, they think it should be opened up a little bit more to get the players who are playing the best at that time out on that tour a little bit more. Then the other debate is, people want to see the names that they've seen on the leaderboard for 25 years and they've earned their right to kind of come play the Champions Tour for as long as they want. What's your sort of thoughts on, would there be a middle ground or a better way to maybe have some of the guys who aren't going to be exempt, because that's like the hardest tour in the world to get out on. There's no doubt about it. It is tough, and there's a lot of great players every year at the Q School. Is there a way that you think that product could be a little bit better from playing in some of the events than trying to go through Q School? You've been on both sides of it a little bit.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because I understand both sides of it, because there are people that come out, they just want to see, the guys that they've seen play for a long time. But from my perspective, I've played professional golf my entire life, and I've always felt like the best players should play. So, it's hard to tell a guy who's shooting high 70s, hey, you can't play anymore even though you won 4 majors, even though you're a real recognizable name. But I think there should be a little more merit than there is right now. I mean, you look at guys like Ken Tanagawa and Scott Perrell, and these are guys that neither one of them played the PGA Tour, but I've played with both of them, and they are phenomenal players. So what does the public want to see? What do they want to see? Do they want to see Scott Perrell hitting at 300 yards, which he does, shooting 65, 66, 67, or do they want to see, I'm not going to pick a name because I don't want to pick on anybody, but they want to see somebody out there that they've known for a little while, that they know their name, but he's shooting 78. I mean, I think, the public wants to see somebody play good golf. And if there's a way to get, a lot of the tournaments, they'll have Trevino and Nicklaus and Andy North, and they do these exhibitions for 9 holes on Saturday. And they're super well attended. Everybody knows they're not there to see great golf. They play a scramble, and it's a great way to see some of the big names still out there on the golf course. So I think something like that would be really good.
Or what about even just having more spots open for Monday qualifying? Because what is it? Is it 2 or 3? It's 4. What about putting that to 10 or 12 every week, right? So then you would have, you don't have to go 63 every time to get out there. And then I would have to think of 10 or 12 players. That would really reward some good, solid play from that qualifier during the week. You think they'd be able to squeeze that in, right? 10 more guys into the tournament. I
think so. I mean, they have 5 spots at the Q School, and the Q School is, obviously you're going to play really good for 4 days to get your card, and it's great. But it's not I don't think it should depend on your entire year for 5 spots. It's very difficult. So why not take those 5 spots, put them on Monday? The guys that aren't exempt to the Mondays have a qualifying for them to be able to qualify. And then you've got 9 spots on Monday. When Marco Dawson came out, he wasn't exempt. And it was that way. I think they had about 7 spots on Monday, 7 or 8 on Monday. And he said, I wouldn't have gotten out. We talked to him about this. He said, I wouldn't be out here on the Champions Tour if there was 4 spots, because so many of them I finished 5th or 6th or 7th, and I got in the tournament. So, yeah, I think that there's definitely a way to do that. But let me tell you, the guys who are exempt with their categories on the Champions Tour are extremely protective of those spots. They don't want change. They want it the way it is now because they want to keep their spot, and I understand that. But I think there is room for changes for sure.
Yeah, I think you don't have to flip the whole system. I think 10 or 12 spots each week for guys who are really playing great I think it'd make the product even better, right? Because then you could have, a guy who's playing great up against a Bernhard Langer or Scott McCarron, right? It's an interesting story. If
for sure.
Like the Doug Barron story was awesome last year. It's like
incredible. Doug's a friend of mine, and he's a great player, and what a great story that was. An incredible story.
And to take out Freddie at the end of it, right? Like that's great TV. It's Doug Barron against Freddie Couples, and he came through with it. So I love those stories as a golf fan. I would like to see a little bit more of that, or those guys to have a little bit more opportunity to kind of show their skill set and get out there.
Me too. Well, you look at last week in Morocco, they had 66 players only in that field.
Right.
So, there's 12 more spots or 12 fewer spots than would be in a normal field. I don't understand why they couldn't have just a regular sized field. And, they could have had more of us guys from Europe play. There was only 5 of us there. And they could have had at least 10. They could have added more guys from the Champions. And there's a lot of things that are frustrating as somebody who's not exempt on the Champions Tour. But, the answer to that always is if you play good, they can't keep you out.
Right. But it's hard. Like you said,
it is hard.
It's really, you can play really good and just still not have the opportunities. Well, we'll see. I hope eventually they open some more spots up. I think it would be good for that tour to have both sides of it, the recognizable names and some guys playing really great and bring it all together. And like I said, the Doug Barron story, and I had him on the podcast, I believe the day after he won. Like, what a great story. Like, how is that not the coolest thing of the year out there? So,
it's an amazing story.
Hopefully they'll change it up a little bit. I like to see a little bit more of competitive from my side, and the names combined. I think it wouldn't be the worst thing for that tour. And speaking of getting ready for 50, what did you do in your late 40s? Because the guys who stay competitive in their late 40s seem to do better on any of the major tours on the 50 and over circuit versus, I'm in the broadcast booth for 10 years and now I got to go try to be competitive again. What did you do to keep your game at a pretty high caliber, so when you had the opportunity, you were ready to go play and go out there and win?
Well, what I did is, I took a couple of jobs that I was still able to practice. I was still able to play some tournaments. I really paid attention to my fitness. When I was 49, I went to see AMP Golf Fitness over in Dallas, who were Jordan Spieth's trainers. And I really got a plan to be fit and ready when I got to be 50. And I didn't play a lot of competition, so I think that's why my first year was a little. When I was 50, it was not quite as good as it has been after that, because it took me that long to kind of get back to used to competing again. But I think the big thing for somebody turning 50 is to make sure that you're fit, that you are physically able to handle the rigors of travel, all the things that, when you're 25 or 30 or 35 that you really don't think about. And so I think that was a big thing for me to be in really good shape whenever I turned 50.
Hey everyone, it's Jason at the Sub 70 Podcast. We would like to announce that we have the $6.99 in a combo set series now. We've expanded the offering of the utility club all the way up to a number 6. You can combine that with the $6.99 iron and make sort of the perfect combo set. A little bit more help in the longer approaches or mid approaches with the $6.99U, and then combine that with our award-winning, tour-proven $6.99 iron to kind of make the perfect combo set where you want it at. So any questions on the hollow body technology or why the iron's working so well, along with any questions on shafts, fittings, grips, anything like that, feel free to let us know. We're always glad to help. You can find all of the information at golfsub70.com, or like I said, feel free to reach out to us on all of our platforms, and we are always here to help make sure that golf club is absolutely perfect for you. Thanks again for listening. Hope you enjoy the podcast. Let's talk about your first victory over on the Stay Shore Tour. You win the Italian Open in a playoff over Peter Fowler. Kind of looking back on that and kind of jumpstarting your career over in Europe and the run you've been on, what sort of comes to your mind, or what was that moment like to kind of get over the finish line and get it done?
Well, the week before at Woburn, which is probably our biggest, I think it's the biggest purse, one of the better events we have on that tour, although we don't have it anymore, but I had a 7-shot lead with not that many holes to play, like 12 holes to play. and I lost, and I really made a mess of it. I mean, it was terrible. And so I think the younger me would have been so devastated by that I would have just cratered for the rest of the year. But like we talked about before, I was just so happy to be playing that. I was mad. I mean, I think anybody would be. But I just went into the next week thinking, yeah, I know I lost, but man, I played great for most of that tournament, and I'm just want to carry that over. And just fortunately, the next week I played just as good. I birdied, I think, 17 to tie Peter, and we went in a playoff, and it was a mess. It was raining, and we had to play 18 as a par 3, which is normally a long par 4. And I hit a great shot in there and made the putt. It was a great feeling. It was a big monkey off my back because I hadn't won a tournament in a long time. So, people don't realize how difficult it is to go from not playing to, oh, wait a minute, I need to win. I'm about to win a tournament. And to get over that line really has helped me to win again and again, just that one victory. And it was a great catalyst towards winning the Order of Merit that year, and also the other victories I've had in Europe.
I was going to ask you about the victory you had in 2019 at the Winston Golf Tournament, beating Ola Thabo coming down to the end. Is there a different pressure when you have a player of that pedigree, Hall of Fame? I mean, he's accomplished everything, right? And is it even more satisfying to nip him by one stroke, knowing that the level of competition you beat that day, and you kind of held him off and held your own? Does it have a little bit of a different vibe to it? It
definitely does. And also Langer was there playing in the last group with Ollie, and to have those two guys and to be able to bring, I shot 30 on the backside, I shot 6 under on the backside, came from 6 back with 9 to play, and won by 1. It was a great feeling to be able to win that tournament, but it was also extra special because of those two guys that were up at the top of the leaderboard that I sailed on past. Those guys are legends. They're major champions, they're Masters champions. They're, Langer's the best player maybe that's ever played senior golf. And Ollie he's a tremendous guy. I played with him earlier the year in France, and super, super nice guy. And I felt kind of guilty because I don't think anybody there wanted me to win except for my wife and son who was caddying for me. I think everybody else either wanted Langer or Olafalo because, it would have been so great for our tour to have somebody like Ollie win a tournament. And he's never won as a senior, but, it was probably one of the highlights of my career to be able to win that tournament with those two guys that, up at the top of the leaderboard.
Talking about the majors on the Champions Tour, I know you've played in, I think, most all of them. Is the feeling on the Champions Tour for a major, is it very similar to a PGA Tour major, or what kind of difference is there when you're, kind of on the biggest stages of both the tours? Is there more similarities, or is it still a little more relaxed than it was when you were playing the PGA Tour? I
think it's definitely more relaxed than the PGA Tour, but I would say the U.S. Senior Open the USGA does a great job with their championships, and it definitely has more of a major feel. The PGA is kind of the same way, but the U.S. Senior Open, always big crowds, which we don't always get on the Champions Tour, on the Stacer Tour. So it definitely has that feel of, this is a big tournament. Some of the other majors, there's 5 majors on the Champions Tour, so the British Senior Open is obviously, playing. We got to play at St. Andrews. We play phenomenal courses. It's a great event that does definitely feel like a major. The Players Championship I played in, it's a great tournament. I wouldn't say it felt as much like a major. I haven't played in the Regions tradition in Alabama, but when you play the same course every year, and it's kind of hard to say. To me, there's 3 majors on the Champions Tour in senior golf, and that's the British Senior Open, the Senior PGA, and the U.S. Senior Open.
Is you still get just massively pumped up for those tournaments? Is it still just? It's got to be so much fun still in your 50s to be competing for championships of that level. It still has to be an adrenaline rush to kind of get out there on the first tee and be announced in the U.S. Senior Open or something to that extent, or the Senior British, right? Like, that's why you put the work in.
There's no doubt that you're definitely more amped for those tournaments, and the preparation is a little different coming up to those tournaments than it is for just a regular event. Like I say, in the British Senior Open, the courses we've played, Royal Porthcawl in Wales was phenomenal. Lytham and St. Anne's last year was one of the best courses I ever played. To get to play the old course in a championship is something I wasn't sure I'd ever get to do. And, it's kind of a bucket list thing that, was an amazing experience. So, yeah, they're different. They definitely are different. We're playing one of the oldest golf courses in the United States this year in Newport, Rhode Island. And I think it's the fifth oldest course in the country, Newport Country Club. So, they are special events.
I was going to ask you about your rookie year on the PGA Tour, and I always find the conversation interesting of the first time you're out there, against the best in the world. Looking back, what's sort of your memories of that rookie year, and is there some great stories from that experience, or is there ever that moment where you're like, oh my gosh, that's Seve Ballesteros hitting balls next to me, or Tom Kite, or just absolute legends of the game? Is it hard not to get wrapped up into some of that a little bit as you're watching some of these guys that you watched growing up playing, and now you're competing against them?
Well, yeah, for sure. I mean, I started off, not great early in my first couple of events, and I wasn't. Then I finished third in the Hawaiian Open and played with Paul Hasinger the last day, and that sort of opened my eyes. And then we get over to Doral, a tournament I normally wouldn't have been in because it was $1.3 million. It was the biggest tournament on tour at the time. I know these young guys would find that hard to believe, but it was the absolute pinnacle as far as purse. And come along the last day, and I'm looking at the pairings, and I had to take a triple take because I was like, Jack Nicklaus? I'm playing with Jack Nicklaus? Here I am, 24 years old, and I'm getting paired with Jack Nicklaus in the last round of Doral. And it was I know there were a lot of caddies that had a lot of bets on what I was going to shoot because they told me about it later. And that experience right there, to be able to play with Jack Nicklaus in a golf tournament, in a PGA Tour event, that solidified to me, okay, yeah, I'm on the PGA Tour. This is real. And I played great. I shot 68. Jack was an absolute gentleman. I mean, probably one of the nicest men I've ever played with. He was deferential. He stopped the crowd when they were running. He is everything that you would want in a playing partner. I mean, he was incredible.
Was it hard not to get caught up in watching him play? I mean, you have to play your game and you're a professional. Was it hard to not watch, the potential?
I was a fan the whole day. I mean, I was watching him the whole day. I mean, I was a total fan because he was one of the reasons why I wanted to play golf. He was everything. And, at that time, Tiger Woods hadn't come around, and, Jack was 51 at the time, and I thought, oh man, he's old, here I am almost 54, but I thought 51, that's, I can't believe he's that old. But he's still a great player at the time. Obviously he had won the Masters not that long before. And yeah, I was a total fan that whole day. I think that's why I played well, because I was on cloud nine.
What a cool experience, right? I don't know if it gets any better than that of a competitive round with Mr. Nicholas. That's no,
I played with Jack.
Stuff.
I played with Ballesteros at the Players Championship one year, and he was another interesting guy. It was great. I played with him 2 days, and obviously he was at the end of his career and not playing well. It was when he was really struggling with his long game,
yeah.
And so we played 2 days, and he missed the cut badly, and I think I barely missed the cut. I had played okay, but I was struggling a bit with my short game, and we got done, and I was like, oh, Seve, it was a great honor to play with you. I really appreciate the 2 days. And he looks at me and he says, oh, Clark, your chipping is not too good. And I was just like devastated. I was like, Seve Ballesteros, the greatest short game player in the world, just told me I stink at chipping. But to his credit, I mean, he kind of took me aside and said, no, you need to do this different things. You need to use different clubs, not the same club. I mean, he kind of gave me about a 10-minute little lesson. So, there's not a lot of people that can say they had Seve show him how to chip. So that was a cool experience as well. I've had
Was
great
his short
experiences
game?
in my life. Oh, his short game was,
It never left him, right?
indescribable, actually. I mean, I never will forget one shot he hit on the 15th at the Players' Championship. Like I say, he was hitting it all over the place. He couldn't drive the ball anymore, but he hit it way over the green. He hit it in the pine straw, and, you know, the greens at the Players' Championship they're always like pavement. And pin was way back in the back, probably 3 or 4 paces off the back edge, and rough behind it. And he's 20 yards over the green on pine straw. I mean, I wouldn't have even been able to hit the green probably. And he hits this, he just kind of zips this little, whatever, 50, 60 degree wedge. It lands 1 foot on the green, takes 1 hop, and it's a foot from the hole. I mean, it was like, my jaw hit the ground. It was unbelievable. I've never seen anybody be able to do anything like that before then or since then. It was amazing.
Well, I didn't mean to interrupt you. There was any other great stories of playing with the absolute legends of the game that you got to experience from that time period?
Well, I've played with a lot of them, and every single one of them, from Ray Floyd to Nicholas to Ballesteros, Faldo. I mean, I've been so fortunate in my life to be able to play with those guys and see them in the arena that, I never won on tour. I regret that, but I don't regret my career at all. I've had a great time. This second act where I've been able to travel in Europe a lot, and I've got to play with guys like Barry Lane and Costantino Rocca and guys that I didn't play much with in my early career. It's been amazing. It really has. And Olaf Albel, I never played with Olaf Albel on tour. I've gotten to play with him now in Europe. So it's really been I can't complain about how my career is going.
Was Mr. Floyd quite intimidating to a young pro out there, or was he?
He was very intimidating. I played with him at Doral as well too, and actually Steve Williams was caddying for him, and it was the week before Steve went to work for Tiger. So I didn't know that at the time, but they announced the next week that Steve was going to work for Tiger. So, yeah, he was a very intimidating guy. I mean, very nice man. But he definitely did not varnish his opinions, for sure.
That's a good combination of talking about intimidating, right? Ray Floyd and Steve Williams staring at somebody in the gallery. I don't know if I'd want those, 4 eyes on me. Really interesting stuff. You got to play in the Masters. So what was that experience like? Did it live up to everything you thought it would be? And, what's your memories of that experience as well, to do something, it's incredible. You got to play in the Masters. Like, how cool is that?
It was a great experience to play in the Masters, but I got to blame Jay Haas for not making the cut, because I played, and obviously I struggled putting, as everybody does the first time they play the Masters. But I managed to shoot 73. I was striking the ball really well, and I felt like, okay, well, that always makes the cut. That conditions weren't easy the second day. I missed about a 15-footer for birdie on the last hole, and I went back to the place I was staying, and I'm watching TV, and Jay Haas is 5 under. He birdies 15, 16, 17, and 18 to get to 9 under, which cut out the 2 overs from the 10-shot rule. And then I want to say that top 40 in ties, and I think there was 40 guys exactly at 1 over, so I missed the cut. But having said all that, even though that was a disappointing ending to it, playing in the Masters and being there was an amazing experience, and it's really like nothing else I've ever seen in golf.
Architecturally, is the course that great? Is it beyond how perfect it is and stuff? Did you just love the challenge of playing it? Was it from that standpoint?
Yeah, no, it's, definitely in my top 5 courses I've ever played, and it was, the thing that you don't really get on TV is how hilly it is, and how the ups and downs. You just can't really tell on TV. The main thing is, though, the course is just immaculate. Like, I've never seen anything that good. It was really, really incredible as far as, you could eat off the fairways. They were amazing.
Well, I got to ask you about the U.S. Open. 94, you finished 6th. You were close. Oakmont, great venue for, a U.S. Open. That just feels like a U.S. Open golf course. What was that experience like, going for the national championship and kind of being right there in it?
Yeah, no, it was great. I was playing with Fred Couples the last day. And Freddie's, cool as a cucumber always. And He didn't play that well, but I shot a couple under on the front. I want to say I was either one back or tied for the lead going into the last 9. And, my agent, Bud Martin, who's, I've been with him since 1990, great guy. He's from Pittsburgh. And so he was super excited, and, he would kill me for telling the story, but I'm going to tell it because he denied it for years, and I think he finally admitted I'm walking from 9 to 10 with Freddie. It's a pretty short walk over there. He's so excited. He comes running up to me. He says, Clark, if you shoot 2 under this 9, you win the U.S. Open.
Oh no, not now, right?
And my wife, who's following me, is saying all the right things. She's like, don't think about it.
Yep.
Just play golf. You're not going to win. There's time here. Just be focused, be calm. My wife is great. We've been married 30 years this year, and she's not a golfer, but she understands psychology, better than most golfers. And, my agent, Bud, comes up and tells me that. And I immediately my eyes probably all the blood drained out of my face at that moment, and I doubled 10. And I bogeyed 11. And then I made a couple of birdies coming in after that, and I actually I hit it close on 15, 16, 17, and 18. So I still had a chance at the end, but it was great to be in that. Well, that was walking up 18 in Oakmont with the grandstands around, playing with Fred Couples. Huge roar. I hit it about 6 feet on the last hole. Huge roar, big ovation. I had chills. It was an incredible experience to be able to do that and be there.
How tough is that golf course set up for a U.S. Open? Is it one of the more, it's got to be up on the list of the more difficult ones you've ever played, I'd have to imagine.
No, I never shot over par there, so it's not that hard.
Or you were playing really good.
My round, I shot 71, which now the par is 70 there, but at the time it was 71. I shot 71, 71, 70, 71. So I'm pretty proud to say that I played a U.S. Open without shooting over par. That's
pretty good.
That's an accomplishment. But yeah, it's an incredible golf course. It is so difficult. You just cannot make a mistake there, and the greens are as difficult or more difficult than Augusta. And so, yeah, it's. I think it's probably my favorite U.S. Open venue that I've played. I think it's just a really, really great test of golf all around.
I was going to ask you, too, about spending time in Europe a little bit, and it's kind of a two-part question, but what are some of your favorite cities or places that you visited in Europe? And then what's the biggest difference of living in Europe, not just there for a vacation, but you're actually living over there, playing that tour? Is there any kind of surprises or things that are a little bit different, of living over there than you thought, or what's different than, we have here in the States? So places you love, and then, I never thought about that, but this is an interesting part about living over there and spending time.
Yeah, no, it's, I didn't spend much time in Europe early in my career. I played a couple of Scottish Opens. I went over for the British Open a couple times. But I really had not spent hardly any time in Europe, so it was a really new experience for me the first year. And amazing experience. I've got 3 sons and my wife, and they're all in college. But when they started, they were just getting ready, either in college or just getting ready to go. So the last 3 years, we've all gotten to spend the summers in Europe. My boys have gotten to see places and things that I would never would have been able to show them if I hadn't been playing the tour over there. It's definitely different. The food is a little bit different. Every country, has different conditions, and the hotels are a little more difficult, not quite as luxurious as in the U.S. in a lot of cases. So I've had to adapt. I've had to learn how to do Airbnb, and I've rent houses, and I'm fortunate. I represent a club over there when I play over there called Hanbury Manor, which is in Hertfordshire, north of London. And so I have a great place to go there to practice and play. We have a tournament there also on the tour. So I've been fortunate that way to have that association and to be able to have that place to go to. But, the places we go, Switzerland, Badgergaz is an amazing place. I mean, it's one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. And then we play a tournament in Austria that is amazing. Of course, not all our tournaments in Europe. We play in Mauritius, which is down in the Indian Ocean, we stay at a hotel called the Prince Maurice, which is probably my favorite place I've ever been in the world. It's like, a beach, ocean, it's just incredible. And we play in the Seychelles, and we played in Madagascar this year. So, I mean, these are destinations that I never pictured myself going to. Some of them, I didn't even know Mauritius existed, to be fair. Before I started playing this tour, it was just a little dot in the Indian Ocean. And so to be able to see these places and experience the different cultures has been a real eye-opener, and it's really taught me and my boys and my wife a lot about the world.
Have to ask, because I love links golf, when you're traveling in the Scotland, North England area, have you had a chance to take a little sidebar and go play some of the great links golf courses in the world since you're spending more time in Europe?
Yeah, I've done a little bit of that. My son went over and played the Brabazon course where they had the Belfry, where they had the Ryder Cup, and he enjoyed that. I played Mercar Links, which is right next to Royal Aberdeen, which a lot of people wouldn't know what Mercar Links is, but it's one of the best links courses I've ever seen. And that's the thing about Scotland and Northern England. There's courses there that nobody's ever heard of that you get on them and you're like, wow, that is amazing. I mean, absolutely amazing golf course. So I recommend to everyone, if they get a chance to go play in Scotland and England, to do it, because it is different golf. It definitely, you have to play a little bit differently, but it's an amazing experience that I think everyone that loves golf should do at least once in their life.
I also know last year you had some skin cancer, a little bit of a scare with some melanomas, and I know it's important to you to kind of let people know, hey, golf, we're all golfers, we spend a lot of time out in the sun. Kind of talk to us about the importance of seeing your dermatologist, wearing sunscreen, all that stuff, and I know you're doing fine with it now from what I understand, but still a scary thing, and, it's probably something we don't think about as much as we probably should.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we all think we're bulletproof, and I certainly did. I've never had any kind of surgery or real health problems in my life, and we had a screening. The European Tour has screenings once a year for us, and we had our European Senior PGA at the London Club, and we had a skin cancer screening, and the lady said, you've got this spot on your neck, you should probably have that looked at when you get home. So when I came home, I went to my dermatologist, and she checked it. I had one on my leg too that I'd had checked a few times, but my wife was very adamant that they check it too. And turns out both of them were melanoma, and they were, I was a swimmer when I was a young kid. I played golf my whole life from the time I was 8 years old, been in the sun. And obviously we didn't wear sunscreen back in those days. And so they were both categories. Fortunately, they were level 0 melanoma, but they both had to be, it was major surgery. It was much more invasive than I thought. And so I'm a big advocate now of making sure people wear their sunscreen. If you can wear the sun sleeves, I started to wear the sun sleeves on my arms, where, you're protected. Just keep your skin protected, because it can happen to anyone, and just be very big. If you see anything on your body that looks, suspicious, go to your dermatologist. Don't wait. Because if it hadn't been for that screening at the London Club, I probably would have waited, and it could have been a lot worse.
Well, I got a couple quick hitters for you, and we'll get you back if the weather's good enough down south there to get back on the practice range. But I'm going to throw a couple at you and just let me know what that comes to your mind here. So my first one is, okay, best golf shot you ever hit under pressure.
Best golf shot I ever hit under pressure. That's a tough one. Probably maybe the last hole of the U.S. Open, even though I wasn't going to win anymore. I was playing with couples, and I had, like I say, there was crowds everywhere, and I had 7-iron in the hole there at 18 in Oakmont, and I hit it in there about 6 feet, and I will remember it to this day how absolutely pure it came off the club. And, there were chills going up and down my spine walking up to the green because there were just so many people there. I was playing with Freddie Couples. And we had a huge gallery the whole day, but that was probably the best shot I had under any kind of pressure.
I know you've known John Daly for a long, long time. Is there one great John Daly story that sticks out in your memory?
Yeah, John and I went to Arkansas together, and we've been friends for a long time. Actually, his agent is Bud Martin too, and one of the reasons why is because I introduced him. Yeah, I don't think there's anything I can tell to a family audience. John, I tell you what, John is one of the most generous, nicest guys you'd ever want to meet. He would, if you had $100 left to his name and you needed it, he'd give it to you. I think a lot of people don't know that about John. He's got the reputation as being a wild, bad boy and all, but he's got a great heart. And, you know, he's done some things wrong in his personal life, but he really is a good person.
You're not the first person to say that on this podcast. All the guys really seem to like him a lot. Like they say he's just a good soul. He's just a good human being. He truly is. So I've heard that multiple times from other professionals who, you know, compete against him and are friends with him. They say he's just a great guy. Next one I got, you may have answered one of these already, but the Augusta question, but 2 or 3 of the best golf courses you've ever gotten to play, you know, architecturally, they don't have to be tour courses, but is there, you know, 1 or 2 or 3 that stands out where that experience was just absolutely amazing to get out there and play?
Well, one that really stands out to me, which I played a European Tour event a couple of times, and it's called the Heineken in Australia, is the composite course at Royal Melbourne. I feel very fortunate to have been able to have played there. Of course, everybody just saw it in the President's Cup, but incredible. It is incredible. It is amazing. It's my favorite course I've ever played in the world. It really is.
What is it
and
about
when they're playing this week, you know, it's not long, so it's 6,800 yards. I don't know if they've lengthened it at this point, but it is strategic. I mean, you can't, even though the fairways are fairly wide, if you hit it in the right side of the fairway, that may be the wrong place to hit it. You can't maybe even hit the green from there. So you have to know, okay, on this hole I've got to hit it on the left side of the fairway. On this hole I've got to be on the right side of the fairway. Coming into this green, I have to be short. It's very strategic. You can't just bomb away there. You absolutely have to know how to play the course.
The green complexes looked amazing as well on TV. I mean, it just looks like that's my style.
The bunkering.
It looked incredible.
The bunkering, the green complexes, they're all just, it's an amazing place.
Didn't mean to interrupt you there. I know you were talking about another one you played too that you were just about to get to on the top of the list.
No, well, where they're playing this week at Pebble Beach, you know, obviously everybody looks at Pebble Beach as a bucket list thing, and it is, and it's beautiful and everything, but the golf course itself is, you know, if you break it down and you just break down the golf course is architecturally, I think, one of the best I've ever played. Have
you played Cypress when you're out there?
I have played Cypress, yeah. Cypress is the same thing. It's beautiful. The guy that used to be my partner at the 18th Pebble Beach is a member there, and actually my first year on tour in 1990, it was still in the rotation for the tournament, so I was able to play it. Then, you know, Cypress is great, but it's got a couple of weak holes that keep it from probably being top 10. I mean, it's probably at the bottom end of my top 10. It's still fantastic, but it's got a couple of, you know, holes that keep it from being number one.
Any other one that stand out in your mind? Is there another one?
Well, Oakmont. I mean, you know, we go back to the U.S. Open. I mean, Oakmont is, I would say probably Oakmont is my number 2 course that I've ever played behind Royal Melbourne. It's similar to Royal Melbourne in that, you know, it's a very strategic golf course with the greens. The green complexes are so difficult that you can't just, you know, it's not a bombs away golf course, even though some bombers have won there. It helps to hit it far, but you have to also play it smart.
Last one I got here for you. You played a lot of golf for a lot of years on a lot of major tours. So the most raw talented player you ever got to play with that you were just blown away by their God-given talent, And who's one of the guys who might have been one of the most underrated players, where like the guys in that fraternity that you guys are in know, gosh, that guy is so good and so consistent, but the general public might not realize how great that player, truly is?
Yeah, well, I think probably, we talked about John Daly already. John Daly is probably has the most raw talent of anybody I've ever seen. Everybody knows he hits it far, but he has incredible hands and an incredible short game. If he had a little different outlook on his, partying, some of the stuff, I think he could have won so many more majors because he had the raw talent to do it. Robert Abbey is another guy. When I thought, wow, this kid is amazing. I mean, he struck the ball so well. He definitely didn't have a career that I thought he was going to have, although he had a solid PGA Tour career. And the one guy I think that probably most people don't know about, back from my generation, that was so good, was Scott Hope. Scott Hope, his ball striking, very kind of an unconventional swing, not a beautiful swing, but probably the most consistent ball striker I've ever played with.
Yeah, he was just good for like 25 years, basically.
He was just good. He was just an ATM. He just made money. That's all he did.
It's interesting. I had Tom Pernice Jr. on after they won that team champions event down in Missouri last year to talk to Tom about the win. And I said, Scott Hoke still have it? And he goes, oh, yeah. When the back nine pressure came on, Scott Hoke turned into Scott Hoke, and he just started flagging irons. And he said, that you just don't lose that gear. He said the more the pressure got on, the better he played. And he was just rock solid still, in his 60s. Tom's like, it was amazing. Yeah. He just turned the switch on, and here comes Scott Hoke. He said he's still
he's definitely he's a ball striker deluxe for sure.
Yeah, he said he's when he needed it, it was still in there. So God, he was a good player, great player for you have 10 or 12 wins, something like that. Yeah, he did it. Look at the extended period he played. He was great in his 40s still. So. Yeah, good call on that one. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I've really enjoyed the conversation. Best of luck on the Champions Tour events you're going to be playing in and over in Europe on the Stay Shore. We look forward to seeing, the results this year and keep up the great play.
Thanks very much, Jason. I appreciate it.